Hello, my name is Kiran Joni. This is the sixth in the introduction series of the Eso-Loop Framework. Until now, we were looking at the problem side. I have discussed the nature of complexity and entrepreneurial complexity, the problems and limitations of contemporary thinking space. I have also discussed what should be in a complexity-friendly design solution for a domain like entrepreneurship. In the last session, I have also given an overview of the framework. In this session, I will give a much detailed introduction to the first component of the framework, that is the complex ecological worldview. Having a complex ecological worldview is the first component and core foundation over which the Eso-Loop framework is built on. The right worldview is a necessary precondition for effective design. If the worldview is reductionistic and simplistic, ignoring important unknowns and variables, the design will reflect this weakness. A complex ecological worldview acknowledges the complex, entangled, interconnected, and interdependent nature of the world we are living in. The importance of having a complex ecological worldview was very well articulated by Fridtjof Capra. According to Capra, the ecological worldview grew out of an awareness that contemporary problems cannot be understood in isolation. They are systemic problems, which means that they are interconnected and interdependent. Now, in order to understand and explain the complex ecological worldview, let us first of all go through some of the existing possible worldviews or alternatives. After that, I will introduce the ecological worldview in contrast to all of these possible worldviews. First of all, the complex ecological worldview is different from single model worldview. A single model worldview is the worldview based on single model, which assumes superiority over all others. This can be equated to what Charlie Munger calls man with a hammer syndrome, which is the idea that if an individual has only one tool or model, he will approach all of his problems with the same solution, that is the hammer. For a man with a hammer, everything around him will seem like a nail. So that's the issue. Most models in the domain of entrepreneurship can be thought of as coming under this category. Secondly, the complex ecological worldview is also different from multiple model ensemble view or multiple model view. This multiple model worldview suggests the complementary use of multiple models or methods. This is the same idea as suggested by Scott Page in his book, The Model Thinker. And also this can be traced to the ensemble forecasting approach, which was developed from the work of Edward Lorenz. This worldview is by default inclusive of the previous one. So that means this worldview is inclusive of single model worldview. Thirdly, the complex ecological worldview is also different from cognitive diversity view. The cognitive diversity worldview suggests using not only formal models or methods, but also all kinds of cognitive diversities like models, methods, theories, heuristics, etc. Scott Page defines cognitive diversity as differences in information, knowledge, representations, mental models, and heuristics to better outcomes on specific tasks such as problem solving, predicting, and innovating. To me, the weakness of this view is in its cognitive reductionism. Even though this worldview is by default inclusive of all the previous ones, any cognitive alone worldview can be criticized for lack of ecological basis. That means it is not grounded in reality, it is in your thinking only. The fourth one is holistic diversity worldview. The complex ecological worldview is also different from holistic diversity worldview. In short, this worldview suggests the existence of not only cognitive diversity, but also all other kinds of diversity. That is diversity in people, networks, information sources, relational expertise, institutions, culture, location, specialization, artifacts, tools, biology, identity, etc. So it is grounded in reality. Real world diversity is reflected here. It is not just about cognition, imagination, brain, thoughts, and all. In short, this worldview is not cognitive alone. It is grounded in reality. It is about action possibilities. Now, this worldview is by default inclusive of all the previous ones. It is inclusive of single model worldview, multiple model ensembles, and also cognitive diversity worldview. As I said, the complex ecological worldview is different from holistic diversity view also. As in the case of six blind men trying to figure out the nature of the elephant together, the understanding of diverse features of the world is important. But that is not enough in a complex world, because the real world is featured by dynamics of evolution and radical emergence. Here, the elephant will emerge to become the dragon or something unknown because of the high level of emergence and evolutionary dynamics in these systems. So this is where the complex ecological worldview comes in. It is not just enough to have cognitive diversity worldview and holistic diversity worldview alone. Because of the dynamical, embodied, connected, and interactive nature of the real world, we need a complex ecological worldview that takes into account all of these dynamical aspects. This means complex ecological worldview is a continuous effort to capture the true ecological reality in its dynamics. The complex ecological worldview is not a static worldview, but includes complexity, emergence, dynamics, evolution, connectedness, interaction, relationality, etc. Complexity involves features and interactive dynamics as in complex adaptive systems. The idea of evolution suggests that existing elements interact, evolve, co-evolve into new diversities, variations, etc. In addition, an ecology is connected, hence no clear local global separation is possible. It involves the use of contextualized sense-making that suggests that every human context is an emergent property, and hence each context has unique type of characters. This worldview is by default inclusive of all the previous ones. Another key point to understand is that I conceive the ecological worldview of the framework of having three important dimensions. That is the macroecological dimension, the microecological dimension, and an active ecological dimension. The macroecological dimension is a big picture view of the ecological complexity that involves properties like holistic interconnection, interdependence, heterogeneous agents, nonlinear dynamics, feedback loops, emergent property, self-organization, dynamics of evolution, attractor behavior, open exchange of energy and information with their environment, etc. So macroecological approach is about the big picture. Everything is connected with everything else. Everything is interacting. These cannot be separated. That's a worldview, fundamental worldview. Second one is the microecological dimension. A practical and working definition of ecology can change with the unit of observation, domains, or problems. On a practical level, the microecological dimension can be viewed perfectly aligned with what J.J. Gibson calls the inseparability of animal and the environment. Here, the animal can be replaced with entrepreneurs, organization, artifacts, etc. This can be seen as a relational account. So, if we take this practical understanding, the framework operates in the entrepreneurial ecology, where the entrepreneurs interact with multiple agents, institutions, artifacts, problems, etc., to form a complex adaptive interdependent system that emerges in the human socio-cognitive material space. The third one is enactive ecological dimension. The enactive ecological dimension of the framework is for acting in the world, which involves the application of two important concepts, self-organization and constraints. This is based on the understanding that complex adaptive systems like entrepreneurship have a tendency to self-organize under various constraints. That means in a complex adaptive system, the dynamics of the system can be understood in terms of self-organization that happens under various constraints. The enactive ecological worldview that includes self-organization and constraints forms the core praxis components of the framework, which will be discussed in the upcoming sessions. To recap, the macroecological dimension is about the view itself, the entire worldview. The microecological dimension is about the relationship. The third dimension is an active ecological dimension, which is all about action. This has two core components, as we discussed, self-organization and constraints, which also forms the next two core components of the framework, that is self-organization and constraints, which will be discussed next. See you soon in the next session, where we will be discussing the effectual self-organization.